Hello, my friends. My name is Adam, and I'm on a quest to be the most prolific reviewer of all time. And yesterday, or maybe over the weekend, I watched a documentary called Eileen Wuornos, Queen of the Serial Killers. And if you don't know who Eileen Wuornos is, that's quite surprising. If you're interested in true crime at all, you probably know who she is. She is one of the few female legitimate serial killers. She killed about 7 people, but she was tried and convicted for the murder of one guy, and she was sentenced to, I guess, the gas chamber, some kind of death by capital punishment. And she died. When did she die? In 2000, 2002 by lethal injection. And since that time, there's been a lot of sort of media fascination with her. There was a movie that came out shortly after, starring Charlize Theron, called Monster, and that was a big deal because basically she kind of uglied herself to play Eileen. And there's multiple documentaries about her, and I think that I've watched quite a few of them. And in fact, I wrote 2 poems about her. One's called Breech Birth, and the other, I forgot what the title is, but basically it's sort of a Canadianized version of her story where she kills somebody in Canada. So the thing that's fascinated me about her is, like, there are things that people say about her that are completely true, but they don't excuse or explain her behavior. And this particular movie is more focused on people who knew her after she was famous for her murders. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But previous documentaries have focused more on her family life. Like they did an interview, I think, with her grandmother or something. And basically, her grandmother said that the reason Eileen turned out the way that she was because of the fact that she was a breech birth, which is ridiculous if you think about actually what happened to Eileen when she was young. She was sexually abused. She lived in a car. She turned to prostitution when she was 14 or 15. And then she lived like a very, very hard life. So it's kind of understandable that she would turn out that way. But then you have, and one person says this later, like she had 500 Johns or something before she started murdering people. And not every prostitute murders their clients, right? So that's one aspect of it. So the weird thing is that her grandmother wouldn't be the first. I mean, I guess she was the first person to sort of like come up with a bunch of explanations as to why she did what she did, right? So then she is befriended and ultimately adopted by this Christian couple. And their whole point of adopting Eileen was to save her soul. And so the woman in this relationship, she becomes really quite a good friend to Eileen. But I think that she also has this sort of like, she also has a theory about why Eileen did what she did. And her theory is that Eileen was this prostitute and she was making out this, living by being this prostitute. And then she met a woman named Tyria Moore and they became lesbian lovers. And I think that's exactly how she says it, like lesbian lovers in quotation marks with a bit of disgust. And the lesbianism was the thing, maybe not the lesbian, but that the lesbianism, but the lesbian was the thing that drove her to murder a bunch of people. Whereas Tyria Moore's story is that she discovered that Eileen was murdering people and she didn't, and they were traveling together, so she didn't want to be held accountable for the crimes that Eileen was doing, which completely makes sense to me, right? Like, imagine you're traveling with somebody or you just know somebody and they turn out to be a serial killer. Like, and it's weird. It's so complicated. I think Eileen is a perfect example of like the gender relations and the gender norms that we have in our society, right? Because there is another case about the BTK killer, and he hid the fact that he was a serial killer from his family for like 20 years, 25 years or something. And nobody ever says that it was the wife's fault that he turned to crime and he turned to be a serial killer, right? Or it was family fault. They might say at most that they were very naive, that they didn't see anything wrong with that situation. So, but it's weird that Tyria, because she's lesbian, that's the reason that Eileen became a serial killer. And I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think that Eileen turned herself in because she was in love with Tyria and she didn't want Tyria to be hurt by her extracurricular activities. And then there is another theory as to why Eileen became a serial killer, which is also presented in this movie. So she had this pen pal, and like it's really, so this pen pal was a filmmaker. I think her name was Jane Hirsch or something like this, from New Zealand. And so she became fascinated with Eileen's story. And so they were like writing, and because she's a filmmaker, she wants to have an interview with her. And there's like this really chilling moment in this documentary where Eileen, so they're setting up the interview, and Eileen whispers to her, but in a voice that clearly can be heard on camera, saying, "You're going to make $1 million from this." So her theory is that, Eileen was the victim of like so much abuse that she just snapped one day, kind of like a falling down scenario, but with a woman. She just snapped one day and just started murdering people. And I don't know how I feel about that. I think like it, and again, if we go to male serial killers, a lot of male serial killers have been abused, have been victimized when they were younger by adults and stuff. But nobody says like, "Oh, poor Jeffrey Dahmer, he murdered people and ate people, but he was abused when he was a kid, so it's okay." And I think with Eileen, because she's such a unique individual, they kind of give her a pass on that. Maybe not everybody, but people who got close to her gave her a pass on that kind of stuff. Yeah. What else is there to say about it? I think like the only maybe other thing that I would say about Eileen Wuornos is that Tyria says that she wanted Eileen to confess because if she didn't confess, then there's no way that they would have caught her, because she's very good at lying and manipulating people. And I think that she's just a throwaway line that she says, but I think it's like true, because we have this kind of stereotype that serial killers are like these geniuses or whatever. And for the most part, that's not true. They're not geniuses, but I think in some cases, they need to be able to manipulate people. And I think that Eileen is a good example of that. She was able to manipulate people, especially after the crimes that she did. And there's another chilling moment where, so she has this friend, Dawn, and they've been childhood friends. And it's really weird. Like, Dawn is not phased. Well, actually, Dawn, she goes to talk to Eileen before the day of the execution. And so basically, Eileen, she's about to be killed by the state, so she doesn't really care anymore. And she says, yes, I am a serial killer. I did kill all those people. And it was killing first, robbing later. Uh, and then, so there's a scene in this documentary where Dawn is telling this New Zealand filmmaker that Eileen confessed to being a serial killer. And the very first response is, but, oh yes, but she was really, really abused when she was a child. And it's like, yeah, a lot of people were abused when they were children. They're not all serial killers, you know? And I, I don't know. I'm laughing, but it's not funny. Um, yeah, so I think that Eileen is this a very contradictory character. And I think that she is this, and the movie does, it does hint about this. It does hint at a few things which are useful to know around this, because there was also this like kind of hysteria at the time that she was like this man killer and that's why she deserved to die, and so completely unnatural, and she was like this disgusting woman, and how could any, like, one of the prosecutors says something like she was a disgusting woman who was not able, like, so basically, so she made her living as a prostitute and she was a serial killer, and those are completely unnatural things. Well, I don't think being a prostitute, I mean, we could argue if that's good or bad, the fact that there are prostitutes, but there have been prostitutes since the beginning of time, so I don't think that's an unnatural thing for humans to do. And about her attractiveness, like, maybe when she's arrested, she's wearing like a jean top and jean pants, so it looks kind of ridiculous. And you can see the charisma that she has when she's being interviewed. So I could see that people would be like, yeah, yeah, that's attractive enough for me at the time, you know? So I think that's not exactly fair to the serial killer, but yes, she is a serial killer. Um, yeah, and I thought that it was really weird that they only tried her for one of these crimes. Because I'm just going to invent a statistic now. I don't know if it's true, but I suspect it is true that generally when serial killers are caught, the number of crimes that they are convicted for is not actually the number of crimes that they've actually done, because they probably randomly murdered some people and those crimes have always are unsolved. And I think if you think about the the victims in those cases, uh, it's kind of sad that they don't, not that you can get closure from a murder or whatever, but I think the police just want us, and the justice system just wants the person to be punished for anything rather than being punished or convicted of everything. And I think if in situations like this, the police and the justice system would do a thorough investigation and they would be charged with everything, it would be better, because then the number of unsolved cases would go down. And I think that there's another thing which is kind of lingering around Eileen's cases, is because she said that, the one that she was convicted for, she said that she was raped, and that's why he was murdered. But I think, I mean, we don't know because we're not there, but if she killed 6 or 7 people, at least, that we know of that she confessed to, and she said she was killing first, robbing second when she, the conversation with Dawn. I really doubt that each of those people were rapists that she killed. They were just unfortunate people in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they made the wrong choice of trying to help this woman or try to get something from this woman because that was her career, you know. And she talks about like one of the person. Yeah, yeah, okay. All right, I have proof that she. I mean, I don't need proof that she's a serial killer because she's a self-confessed serial killer, but she's talking about like why she killed different people, and one person was a drug dealer, and that's why she killed him. He was a drug dealer, right? Not the best person in the history of humanity, I'm sure, but he wasn't a rapist. He was just doing an illegal profession like she was doing. So this is kind of like the explanation that male serial killers give when they say that they're killing prostitutes, because I killed her because she was a prostitute. So hers is like, I killed him because he was a drug dealer. So they're just finding justifications after the fact for this unfortunately natural urge for them to kill. And I think I don't have any conclusions, and I've been kind of rambling about it, but what do you think? Do you think that AILEEN WOURNOS was a serial killer and she just happened to be formed by all of these tragic circumstances? Or do you think that the tragic circumstances of her life made her into a serial killer? Discuss in the comments. If you'd like to support what I do, please like and subscribe. I want to have 250 subscribers by the end of January, and we're at 220, so I think it's completely possible. If you're listening on Spotify, please give me a follow. Thank you. Bye-bye.